Welcome to the Butterfly Effect, Stage 7 of Dauphiné 2021. 171 kilometers, about 105 miles in length. 4 categorized climbs, all starting in the second half, but the first 3, about 40 kilometers of it, basically is just one big climb there. After the descent, they'll start La Planche. It's a 17-kilometer long climb at 7.5%. We got some fantastic racing on today's stage. Now, I tune in at about 50K to go when they're just finishing going up all the big first 3 climbs. There's a breakaway there, 7, 8 riders, but there's really not much to talk about with the breakaway, with the exception that it took 80 kilometers for the break to get away. So you know the first half of today's stage before the climbing started was epically hard. Now, once the climbing starts, it's about 40 kilometers of climbing before you go down the technical crazy descent and start the last climb. One guy I want to point out in the break, and then I don't have enough time to talk about anyone else. Lawson Craddock in the breakaway there will steal points on the KOM jersey, and he'll get that at the end of today's stage. Now let's get back with the GC guys because there's a lot to talk about. Movistar are riding, and they're doing a fantastic job over the last climb and down the technical descent. The break, when I tuned in, had about 3 minutes, but time gap is dropping fast. And with a 17-kilometer long climb, they're going to get caught for sure. 3 minutes is not enough. They'll start that last climb with about 2.5 minutes, but Movistar are drilling it on the front when the climb starts proper. Ineos will get on the front and take over from Movistar, and then Movistar will just come right back and take it again. So there's a little bit of team dueling there on who's going to control this last climb. Now, 10 kilometers, it's Alejandro Valverde that gets on the front after Carlos Verona pulls off, and Alejandro Valverde is going deep, and he's trying to split this race up. The favorites, some of the favorites in the top 10 GC are getting popped. The group's about 20 strong at this particular moment. At 8.5 kilometers, Richie Porte will throw in the big attack from the GC favorites that'll start blowing this race apart. I want to back it up though, just split seconds. I'm going to show you some different angles of what was happening just before Richie Porte's attack. Before he attacks, we see him look back at G. Thomas. G. Thomas is giving him the nod. That's the A-OK. That's the sign when we're watching from the couch enjoying today's spectacular race that Richie Porte is getting ready to attack, and he does. He lights it up. Now let me back it up a split second again. Let's look down the right side of the group of favorites there, and it's Marc Perdon, the Bahrain victorious Domestique back there riding for Jack Haig, who's sitting top 10. He's on the right outside of the group. We'll see him look over at his team leader there. Just at that moment, we'll see Sepp Kuss pull out in front of him, and he's going to follow Sepp Kuss, who's following the attack of Richie Porte, and they're coming from way back. In my mind, Marc Perdon is breaking the number 1 rule. And the number 1 rule by now, if you watch the Butterfly Effect, you know it. You never leave your race leader is what I'm thinking right now. Now, there is always a reason to break a special rule, and if you're going to break it, you better do something amazing, but I don't think it's coming. I mean, it's Marc Perdon. How's he going to do something amazing? I covered this kid on Beyond the Coverage. I talked about him at the last stage of the Basque Country. I'll post it here, and in that video, I called that kid a little too big to be a climber even. Now we're on the first massive big summit climb, La Planche, 17K long, 17.5%. It's 9.5 kilometers from the finish, and he's with some of the best climbers in the world. Richie Porte was third in the Tour de France last year. He is a legend. And here is Marc Perdon, who has a guy sitting top 10 in Jack Haig, and Marc Perdon, I had to look at the results. I didn't even know where he was. He's 35 minutes back on GC, breaking my number 1 rule, going up the road with the Flying Eagle, Sepp Kuss, following the tack there of Richie Porte. Now let's back it up again. I'll show you another picture just as Richie Porte's attacking. It's race leader Alexei Lusenko, and he's reaching into his back pocket, watching Tour de France podium finisher last year, Richie Porte attacking, going up the road with his hand in his back pocket. Talk about getting caught with your hand in the cookie jar. There's nothing he can do about it. Richie Porte's lighting it up. Now let me back it up just at that same moment, but before Richie Porte attacks, Enric Mas is coming from the left side, trying to close the gap up to Richie Porte's attack. So Enric Mas is coming here. Race leader's on the left with his hand in the cookie jar. Sepp Kuss is going up the right side, and Mark Perdome is latched onto the Flying Eagle there. As they all come together, the four in front, they'll swing back to the right, and you'll see Ben O'Connor, the AG2R rider, who can't close the gap, and he's got all of the favorites on his wheel. Ben O'Connor's opening the gap, and that's giving Richie Porte a chance to break away with the three other riders. Behind Ben O'Connor, Lopez, we're talking about Movistar back there. He's not going to jump the gap, and he's not going to help Ben O'Connor because he has Enric Mas. G. Thomas, who already told Richie Porte to go up the road, clearly isn't going to close that gap, and the other guys are swinging on for dear life. That gap will start to increase. Ion Izagirre, the Astana rider, will come to the front and set tempo for Alexei Lusenko to try to protect that yellow jersey. Now, I said that happened all at 8.5 kilometers to go. 1 kilometer later, we're talking 7.5 kilometers to go. Mark Perdome is throwing in attack on Richie Porte and Enric Mas and the Flying Eagle, Sepp Kuss. I'm sitting there on the couch. I'm like, what is this kid thinking? Now, I already pretty much called him a knucklehead and a little bit too heavy to be a climber there on the channel beyond the coverage when I talked about how crazy the tactics he was using. Now, this is the second time I'm really getting to see him here on the Butterfly Effect, and I'm like, Mark, what are you doing, boy? You are climbing with Sepp Kuss, you are attacking Enric Mas, and you are dropping Richie Porte. Are you crazy, man? TV coverage and watching NBC Sports Gold. It's Bob Roll, Steve Schlanger. Bob Roll's the color commentator there, and he is just ripping Mark Perdome apart, talking about he can't believe how he's pulling with Sepp Kuss. Does he not know who Sepp Kuss is? Just when Bob Roll finishes the words how impressive Sepp Kuss is, the camera flips back, and Mark Perdome is dropping Sepp Kuss and going up the road solo. Now, Bob must have felt that one straight in the heart right there. And Bob, I got your back, boy, because I agree with you 100%. When I was watching the whole thing, I'm like, Bob, that boy, Mark, he just broke my number one rule. What is he thinking? Then he's dropping Richie Porte, Enric Mas. Then he's pulling one-on-one with Sepp Kuss. So, Bob, I feel for you, boy. You just put a dagger through your heart, but he's going solo now. There's nothing we can do about it. He can't hear us from the couch or the TV studio, so we better just tighten that seatbelt because this boy is going fast. Mark is putting in a dig, and he is going all the way to the line. He will stay off solo and do a spectacular ride and take the victory on the hardest climbing stage of this year's Dauphiné. It is a spectacular win for the Bahrain victorious rider. And let me tell you, folks, a lot of times when you see a rider, a coming out party like we saw today out of a rider, it's a spectacular moment. We got another player up there. July is just around the corner. I'm talking the Tour de France. We might get to see Mark Perdome do something amazing again at the Tour de France. Today's stage, when I see a guy that has a coming out party and he wins from the breakaway, I'm impressed. A win is a win. It's fabulous. But when you are dropping the best in the world, when you know the best in the world are chasing you 100%, because Richie Porte, he might have let Mark do that attack just to begin with, but after that, 100% certain, Mark is going hard and doing a huge effort because Richie Porte is trying to get the yellow jersey at this year's Dauphiné. Behind Richie Porte, Alexei Lusenko, Astana, in yellow, is chasing Richie Porte, so you know Richie's doing 100%. Up front, Sepp Kuss, he just rode the Flying Eagle off his wheel. You know Sepp Kuss is going 100%. Make no mistake when you're sitting on the couch. Mark Perdome put on a fantastic show, and it was a coming out party today on stage 7 of the Dauphiné for Bahrain Victorious. Now, if I was the director, when I saw Mark Perdome jump across to go to Richie Porte, and he's leaving Jack Haig, who's just done spectacular work every stage for Sonny Colbrelli, just the last guy left, helped him win a stage with Sonny Colbrelli, and now is still riding top 10, and you left your number one rider there for Mark Perdome going up the road to win the stage. If I was the director, I'd have called him back for sure. We hear him talk about that in the interview, and Mark Perdome thanks his director for not calling him back. Man, I don't know if that was on purpose or not, because if he would have gotten second on today's, I would have been calling that director an absolute knucklehead. I've already called Mark Perdome a knucklehead. I'm going to have to apologize right there to you, Mark, because that was just a beautiful ride today. I was absolutely amazed, and I had so much fun watching you win today from the couch that hats off. And everything I can give you for applause, I'm giving you and sending your way. Now let's go back to the GC favorites because Mark Perdone put on the win, but we got a yellow jersey battle back there. We got Sepp Kuss up the road solo. Richie Porte chasing. He's got Enric Mas. Enric Mas working a little bit, but for the most part, it's Richie Porte on the front. And behind, Alejandro Valverde puts in another dig finally with about 5K to go. And he's making it as hard as he possibly can so that Lopez can jump across. We'll see attacks from multiple different riders because Lopez didn't make it right away. Finally, Lopez will make it across up to Richie Porte with about 2.5 kilometers to go. Enric Mas will get on the front and drill it as hard as he can. Lopez will throw in another tack under 2K to go. With 1K to go, Richie Porte will throw in his own attack that no one can follow except for Lopez. And then finally, Lopez pops. Richie Porte comes in second on the stage to steal the race leader's yellow jersey with 1 day left at this year's Dauphiné. Lopez does a great job to finish their third podium on today's stage. And fourth, and I got to point this out because it's Bahrain victorious Jack Haig that gets back there and gets fourth on the stage. What a fantastic ride. For Bahrain victorious, first and fourth on the stage. Jack Haig will stay in the top 10 on general classification. Mark Perdone, I already told you, won a spectacular stage. Bahrain victorious have been on the front all throughout this Dauphiné, getting seconds, first, and a second there with Sonny Cabrelli, and now they get another first on a great stage and a fourth and a top 10 on general classification. Want to point one other thing out because it's the butterfly effect, right? Mark Perdone's been working all week. We've seen him dropped by the finish of every stage. That's why he was so far down on GC. He had to believe he had some kind of legs. He talked about in the interview how much he hurt and suffered throughout every stage so far and didn't believe he could be this good on this stage. And that's because he was doing so much work back there for Sonny Cabrelli. Now I want to talk about, that's a Domestique rider that had a coming out party and won today's stage. Now I want to talk about another Domestique rider, Richie Porte. Because Richie Porte we've seen working for Theo Gegenhardt and of course G. Thomas throughout this week of racing. And now Richie Porte is race leader at this year's Dauphiné with one stage to go. He's in a great position. Alexei Lusenko held on to stay second on the general classification. And G. Thomas is third. So tomorrow's stage is going to be a legendary stage. I didn't keep the jerseys up here for no reason. Special jerseys right here. I already told you about it on the Butterfly Effect yesterday. Look forward to that last climb tomorrow because it is going to be amazing. Big time fight amongst all the favorites. Hell, sitting here on the stool, I'm picking Mark Perdone to win the stage again tomorrow because he's still down on GC and he's clearly the best climber we have at this year's Dauphiné. Hope you loved today's take on the Butterfly Effect. Like and subscribe and I'll see you guys real soon.